My family told me not to embarrass them at the reunion. I quietly sat in the corner. Then the host announced the main sponsor's name, and everyone turned to stare at me. My name is Thomas Reed, but everyone calls me Tom. I am 58 years old. I work with my hands. I fix doors. I fix broken fences. I fix what people give up on. I like quiet. I like simple food. I like to listen more than I talk. And I have a family that used to smile at me in front of people and whisper about me when the doors closed. On the morning of our big family reunion, my sister Lauren sent me a message that said, "Please don't embarrass us today." It had a smiley face at the end. It looked sweet. It did not feel sweet. My thumb hovered over the screen. I typed "no worries." Then I erased it. I typed "okay." Then I erased that too. In the end, I sent a thumbs up and put my phone face down on the table. The reunion was at a fancy event hall with white walls, gold trim, and a silver stage light that made people's faces glow. The hall smelled like butter and sugar from the cake table and like new carpet. Everyone wore bright colors. There were little name tags on our chests so the cousins who moved away could remember who was who. Music played soft and happy. Children ran between legs. Aunt Carol laughed in a high voice that everyone could hear. My brother Mark told the same jokes he tells every year. His tie was red. It matched his face. I chose a chair in the back corner near the plant that was not real and the emergency exit that was. I liked that spot. I could see everyone, and no one cared to see me. Then the host, a kind woman with a loud microphone, tapped the mic and said, "Good evening, Reeds. Are we ready to celebrate?" The room cheered. She smiled and waves of bracelets flashed on her wrist. She said a few silly things to make people laugh, and they laughed. Then she held up a gold envelope. "Tonight," the host said, "we want to thank the person who made this reunion possible. The main sponsor. The reason the hall is paid for. The food is covered. The games are free. And that surprise you'll see later has a home." Chairs squeaked. Heads turned left and right. People whispered names. "Probably Mark," someone said. "Or maybe Aunt Carol," someone else said. Lauren's eyes lit up. She straightened her dress. Mark leaned back like a king in a chair, lips pulled to one side like he already knew. The host opened the envelope and pulled out a card. She read it twice. Then she looked up and smiled at the crowd. "The main sponsor," she said, "the person who gave the gift that made tonight happen is Thomas Reed." Every head turned toward the corner. Every neck bent back toward me. I sat very still. Someone dropped a fork. It clinked on the floor and kept rolling until it hit a shoe. There was a little "oh," and then a hush. I could hear the soft hum of the air vents. I could hear my own heart. The host lifted her hand toward me. "Tom," she said into the mic, "please come up and let us thank you." I gripped the sides of my chair. And just before I stood up, a voice from my family's table snapped, clear and sharp. "No, he didn't." The room froze. Now I will tell you the rest. But I have to start from the beginning, so you understand why I chose to sit in that corner, how I learned to keep my mouth shut, and why the envelope with my name on it was not a trick or a mistake. When I was a boy, my dad called me steady. I was not the smartest one. That was Lauren. I was not the loudest one. That was Mark. I was the one who stayed after the game to put away the balls and sweep the floor. When Mom got sick for the first time, I learned how to boil chicken and rice, how to fold towels so the edges lined up, and how to press Dad's shirts without burning the cuffs. It was not hard. It was just patient work. Patient work is my job now, too. I married young. Her name was Diane. We were sweet together in the beginning. We grilled burgers on the porch and looked at the sky. We lost a baby. After that, the house went quiet. We tried to speak, but our words were like wet matches. They would not light. She left in winter. I watched her taillights turn the white street red. The next day, I called into work and said I was fine. I was not fine. I am not sure you ever really get fine after that. But patient work holds you together, little piece by little piece. It keeps your hands busy while your heart learns to breathe again. I gave more than I took, because that felt right. I fixed Aunt Carol's porch steps when they cracked. I hung Mark's new kitchen cabinets when he moved into the bigger house. I drove Lauren to job interviews that were far away and waited in the parking lot, so she did not have to come out to an empty street. When our mother needed new medicine that insurance would not cover, I sold my old blue pickup truck. I loved that truck. I had shined the steering wheel with my own hands. I watched another man drive it away, and I waved. I told myself, "It's only a truck, Tom." Patient words. Patient work. None of that made me special. It just made me steady. But the thing with steady people is this. People forget you are there. They lean without seeing you. They stack more weight on your back, and then complain you are slow when you keep walking. No one asked me what I wanted. No one asked me what I saved for, what I dreamed about, what hurt. I did not make a fuss. I said, no worries, and glad to help, and any time. Then one day I learned that any time had become every time. And that was not kindness anymore. That was slow bleeding. 2 years ago, when Mom fell again and hit her hip, I slept on her couch for 4 months so she would not be alone. I cooked oatmeal with cinnamon in the mornings. I learned how to set the pill box and the phone alarm. I walked her to the window every sunny day and named the birds with her. We weren't rich, but we had enough. Mom sometimes smiled and said, "Steady, Tom." When she said that, the ache in my chest felt warm instead of empty. After Mom passed, the house seemed to fold in on itself. The family came for the funeral, brought flowers, and told me I was so strong. After they left, the bills came. I paid them. I did not tell anyone. I did not want to fight over money while the smell of Mom's soap still hung in the bathroom. At Thanksgiving last year, we sat around Lauren's table eating dry turkey and thick gravy. Mark started one of his big stories about business and how he closed some deal. He likes that word, closed. It makes him feel like he pushed the world into a corner and made it shake his hand. People laughed. He liked being in the center. I watched him and wondered if I ever wanted that. I didn't. I wanted something else. I wanted the family to be kind to each other. I wanted them to stop measuring worth by noise and speed. After dessert, in the living room, Mark clapped my shoulder and said too loudly, "You know, Tom, maybe skip the reunion next summer. We're inviting the whole clan. A lot of big people are coming. We don't want you know." He waved his hand at my boots, at my work jacket, at the soft spots that life had pressed into me, and he smiled. "We don't want any surprises." I put my fork down. "Surprises?" I said. "Embarrassment," Lauren said quickly, as if ripping off a bandage. "He means embarrassment." The room got quiet. A football game hummed on the TV with the sound low. A kid dropped a toy. It bounced and rolled under the couch. "Embarrassment," I repeated, because sometimes saying a word helps you believe that it really reached your ears. "It's just you say things sometimes," Mark said. "You get sentimental. People don't get that." "People," Lauren echoed, like she was moving furniture from one side of her mouth to the other. I smiled a small smile and said, "I'll be quiet." It came out like a promise and a warning. They heard the promise and missed the warning. After Thanksgiving, I counted my savings. I do not have much, but I have enough for 3 months of quiet if I ever need to stop working and rest. I keep that money in a small account at a small bank where the teller knows my name. I also have something else I keep, a list of every time I was helped by someone who did not have to help me. Mr. Gutierrez, my shop teacher in 10th grade, who gave me old tools when his brother closed a hardware store. Miss Miles, who called me sir when I was only 20, because she said respect should be given forward, not given up. A neighbor named Joe, who helped me carry a couch down a narrow stairwell and told me a joke about penguins so I would not drop it. People like that are beams in a roof. You don't see them until the storm, but the roof does not stand without them. In January, I called the event hall where our family wanted to meet. The woman who answered was named Monica. Her voice was calm. She asked what I needed. I told her the whole list: food, music, a little stage, chairs that did not squeak too much, a room for kids to play, a corner where old pictures could be pinned. I told her our budget. She told me their price. The numbers did not match. I said, "Okay, thank you for your time." She said, "Hold on, sir. Sometimes people give to other people. Sometimes we can make things work." 2 days later, she called back and said they could lower the price if a single person took responsibility and paid early. I did the math twice. I wrote each cost on paper and underlined it. I looked at my 3 months of quiet money. The pen felt heavy in my hand. I thought about my family, the good parts and the hard parts, the days we used to sit on the porch when Mom was strong and blow bubbles for the kids just to watch them pop in the sun. "Okay," I said to Monica. "I'll do it. One condition." She asked what it was. "Keep my name private until the night. And if we can skip saying it at all, even better." She laughed softly. "People like to clap for the person who pays," she said. "I know," I said, "but I don't want the clap. I want a quiet night." She said she would note it and try. I paid. It was more than I liked. It took almost all of my safe quiet. But something in me felt steady again, like rails set in fresh gravel. If I was going to be part of this family, I wanted the best parts of us to have a place to breathe. I wanted little kids to run and laugh and eat a second cupcake without a fight. I wanted old stories to be told with hands that didn't shake from worry about the bill at the end. I wanted to do something kind without asking for anything back. I did not think of revenge. Not then. I thought of relief. The weeks passed. I fixed cabinets for a neighbor. I replaced a door for a church. I wrote Monica 2 emails about the menu because Aunt Carol is allergic to walnuts and my cousin Harper is vegan this month. Monica answered with little smiley faces and got it. I liked her clarity. I like people who do what they say they will do. Then, 3 days before the reunion, Lauren sent me another message. Tom, please don't talk too much on Saturday. There will be important guests. Don't dress like you're going to work. She sent a picture of a fancy jacket for inspiration. I typed, I'll wear what's clean. Then I erased it and wrote, I'll be quiet. She hearted the message and sent a star. On reunion day, I wore a plain blue shirt, clean jeans, and my good boots. I put on the jacket my mother liked on me. It smelled like cedar from the little block in my closet drawer. I ironed it with slow hands. I thought of Mom and the bird names, and I smiled. When I got to the hall, I walked around the back and came in through the service door because old habits are hard to break, and I didn't want to bump into people at the front. Monica saw me and gave a small wave. She pointed to the corner I showed you before, with the fake plant and the exit. I saved you the best spot, she said. I said, you did. She laughed. We did have one change, she added. The committee insisted we name the sponsor. Transparency, they said. She rolled her eyes. I said we could say it at the end, not the beginning. I nodded. Thank you. I tried to make myself small. I drank water and ate one cracker. I watched my family arrive one by one like actors in a play they had practiced in the mirror. Mark wore his red tie. Lauren wore a peach dress that floated when she walked. Aunt Carol's laugh rose and fell. Children chased balloons. People hugged me without looking at my face. Hey, Tom, they said to my name tag. I said hey back. A little girl with curls lost her bow near my chair. I picked it up and handed it to her. She said, thanks, mister. Her mother mouthed, thank you from across the way. Small things like that make the air lighter. I held on to that feeling. Then the host tapped the microphone, and she said those words about the sponsor. And all the heads turned. The first face I saw was Lauren's. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, then flicked toward Mark as if to ask if he knew. Mark did not clap. He did not smile. He sat very still with that half smirk he wears like a medal. Aunt Carol's laugh cut off like a faucet. I could hear the vent hum again. My hands felt warm. My chest felt calm. I stood. That is when a voice cut the air, sharp as a knife and meant to slice. No, the voice said. Not a whisper. A strike. No, he didn't. The voice belonged to my brother, Mark. His chair screeched as he stood up. He pointed at me across the room, his red tie like a flag. There is no way he paid for all this. He laughed a laugh that was empty inside. Come on. A wave of murmurs spread like wind through tall grass. Some people looked confused. Some looked hungry for a scene. The host blinked and held her smile tight like it might run away. I stayed still. I have learned that stillness makes loud things fall down faster. Mark stepped toward the middle of the room. This is ridiculous, he said. You people don't know him like we do. He fixes things. He doesn't pay for ballrooms. He can't. Lauren tugged his sleeve. Mark, she said. He shook her off. He lifted his chin. Whoever wrote that card made a mistake. Or he is lying. The word, lying, bounced off the walls and hit me in the chest like a cold hand. Less extreme things happen all at once. A baby cried. Someone poured lemonade and missed the cup. A cousin bent to tie his shoe and bumped his head on the table. The music stopped. You could hear plates clink and the small fizz of soda cups. The host looked down at the gold card in her hand. She looked at Monica. Monica stepped forward calmly and said, Sir, we have records. Her voice sounded like a level table, flat, steady, and useful. Mark laughed again. Show them, he said, throwing his arms out. Show everyone who actually paid. Lauren grabbed his sleeve again. Please, she whispered, her lips barely moving. I knew that whisper. It was the same whisper from the Thanksgiving living room. The kind that meant, stop before you look like the thing you think you're fighting. Mark pulled away. He took 2 long steps toward the stage, toward the host, toward the envelope with my name. Like he could put his own name there, just by leaning hard enough. He pointed at me again, and his finger shook. He didn't, he said, lower this time, but more dangerous, like a dog's growl through teeth. I could have spoken then. I could have said, "It's okay," like I always do. I could have made a joke to ease the room. I could have walked outside and waited for a cloud to pass. But I remembered two things at once, and they held me in place. Mom at the window, saying, "Steady, Tom," and the feeling of a roof beam, a quiet piece of wood that holds up a heavy ceiling and never asks for applause. The host cleared her throat. "Mr. Reed," she said into the mic, "would you like to answer?" I opened my mouth. And at that exact moment, my cousin Derek, who always tells big stories after 2 glasses of punch, stood up too fast, knocked his chair back, and shouted, "If he didn't pay, then where did the money come from? Because our committee account is empty." Empty. Someone took it. A gasping sound rolled through the hall. Empty. Someone took it. The words spread like fire on dry leaves. Mark spun toward Derek. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. Derek held up his phone with shaky hands. "The account. The one I used to collect family contributions for the DJ and extra desserts. It's zero. It was there this morning. It's gone now." Heads turned again, away from me, toward Derek, toward each other, back to me, back to Mark, like the room itself didn't know where to land. Monica stepped forward. "The hall is fully paid," she said calmly. "By a private sponsor months ago." The room split in feeling. Relief that the night was safe. Fear that something else was not. I could feel it in the air, sharp and sour. Old jealousy. Old pride. Old stories pushing their way to the front. Lauren's face went pale. She pressed her hand to her mouth, like she was holding in a word she didn't want to lose. The host looked from the gold card to Derek's phone to me to Mark, as if she were watching 4 different storms on a weather map. My chair in the corner waited, legs planted and quiet. I took 1 step forward. "Don't," Mark said to me, low and hot. "Don't move." I met his eyes. I kept my voice steady. "I'm not the one you should be talking to like that," I said. He took another step, his tie swinging. "You think this is funny?" His face was red now, red like his tie, red like the words he had thrown in the air and could not grab back. "You think you can come in here and—" A child bumped the cake table. The cake slid half an inch and stopped. A tiny blue sugar flower fell to the floor and landed face up. Silence tightened around us. Then, from the other side of the room, a new voice rose. It was soft, but clear, like a string pulled tight and plucked once so everyone can hear the true note. Aunt Carol, who laughs too loud but sees too much, stood up and said, "Enough." Everyone looked at her. She pointed, not at me, not at Mark, not at Derek, but at the screen behind the stage, where a slideshow of baby pictures had been quietly looping. "Monica, dear," Aunt Carol said, "play the message the sponsor sent you. The one you told me about when we were setting up the flower table. The thank you message." Monica clicked something on a laptop. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed. The first frame flickered onto the screen, and the face that filled the wall made every breath in the room catch at once. It was not mine. It was not Mark's. It was a face all of us knew. A face we had not seen in 3 years, a face that should have been too far away to speak to us tonight. The room leaned in as one. My heart tapped once, hard, in my chest. And before the first word played from the speakers, Lauren's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. The face on the screen flickered, the colors bright and cold. The voice that followed made every breath in the room stop midair. "Hello, everyone," it said. "It's been a while." It was Mom. 3 years gone. Buried under the oak tree behind St. Mary's Church. Her soft voice filled the speakers like a ghost sitting in the middle of us. Lauren gasped. Mark froze. Someone whispered, "That's not possible." The recording continued. Mom was sitting in her favorite armchair, sunlight from the window behind her. She was thinner, but her eyes were clear, the same eyes that saw through every lie we ever told. "I asked Thomas to record this," she said, smiling faintly, "because I wanted to say something to all of you. If you're hearing this, that means he kept his promise." My throat tightened. I hadn't seen that video since the night she made it. She looked into the camera and said, "This reunion was my idea. Before I got sick, I told Thomas that I wanted one last big family gathering. Not for me," she laughed softly, "but for you all to remember what family means. I gave Thomas the last of my savings and told him to make it happen when the time was right." Murmurs spread through the hall. Heads turned toward me, Toward Mark. Toward Lauren. Mom continued, and if Thomas decided the time was now, then I trust him. Her smile faded into something gentle but sharp. To my children, Lauren and Mark. If you're there, remember this. Being loud doesn't make you strong, and being quiet doesn't make you weak. Thomas never asked for credit. That's why he was my favorite. The room erupted into whispers. Someone even clapped before realizing it wasn't the right moment. Mark's face drained of color. Lauren's lip trembled. Aunt Carol crossed her arms and nodded slowly, like every word confirmed something she'd known all along. Mom's recording wasn't done. If you're proud, let it be of your hearts, not your clothes or titles. If you ever forget who holds this family together, look for the quiet one in the corner. Then the screen went black. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then Mark let out a small, shaky laugh. That video is old, he said. She didn't mean. She couldn't have meant. But the damage was already done. The host turned to me. Mr. Reed, she said, her voice softer now. Thank you for your generosity. On behalf of everyone, we're grateful. Applause started from somewhere near the back. Then it spread, louder, fuller, until the whole hall was clapping. Except Mark. He stood stiff, jaw tight, eyes burning with humiliation. Lauren looked down, pretending to check her phone. I smiled, just a little, and nodded to the crowd. It was for her, I said quietly. But the moment of calm didn't last. Not even a minute later, Derek, still clutching his phone, shouted, "Hold on. I just got an alert. Someone transferred $10,000 out of the family account this morning to a private business name. It says Reed Restoration, LLC. Every head turned again. Mark's mouth curved into a crooked grin. And there it is, he said. There's the trick. You took our money to sponsor this, didn't you? That's why Mom's video looks staged. The words hit the air like a stone through glass. Lauren's eyes widened. Mark, stop, she whispered. But he didn't. No, let's talk about it. Our dear handyman brother here took money that wasn't his and used Mom's name to cover it. You always wanted to be the hero, didn't you, Tom? The good son. My fingers tightened at my sides. The room started to buzz again. Whispers, shifting feet, the sound of plates being moved nervously. I could have yelled. I could have thrown my truth at him like a hammer. But that wasn't how I was raised. Mom taught me something years ago. When people shout, stay still. The storm always reveals who started it. Mark, I said calmly. Do you remember when I helped you renovate your office last summer? He frowned. What does that have to do with this? Do you remember how I told you to check your bank alerts more often? He blinked. What? Because while you were bragging about your new contract, I continued, your secretary wired a deposit into my business account. You said it was a bonus for helping you. I told you I didn't want it. You told me to keep it. You forgot, didn't you? The color drained from his face. Lauren whispered, Mark, you did send him that money. No, that's not. I took my phone out and scrolled. You used the same account name, Reed Restoration, LLC. That's where the reunion payment came from. I turned the screen toward him. The same account ID glowed under the transfer details. Your mistake, brother. The room went dead silent. Mark's mouth opened, but no words came out. Then Aunt Carol burst out laughing. Not her usual high-pitched laugh. This one was deep, almost cruel. Oh, Mark, she said. You really just paid for your own humiliation. A wave of laughter spread. Even the host covered her mouth to hide a smile. Mark stood frozen in the center of the room, his face redder than his tie. Lauren looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. I didn't say anything else. I just walked back to my seat in the corner, the same seat they told me to stay in to avoid embarrassing them. The hall was still echoing with laughter when I sat down and reached for my water glass. But as I took a sip, my phone buzzed on the table. A new message from an unknown number. It said, You think it's over, Thomas? It's not. I looked up slowly and saw Mark standing by the exit, staring right at me. His smile was gone. His jaw clenched. And in that moment, I knew something else was coming. Something worse than words. The night wasn't over yet. The next morning, the sun rose pale and tired over Maplewood. The air smelled like rain that had changed its mind halfway down. I stood in my kitchen, holding my coffee, staring out at the small garden my mother loved. The roses were still blooming, soft, pink, alive. I should have felt peace. Instead, there was a pit in my stomach that felt like a nail. Mark's message replayed in my mind over and over. You think it's over, Thomas? It's not. He always had to have the last word. Even as kids, if you beat him in checkers, he'd tip over the board and say it didn't count. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was pride talking. Maybe he'd cool off. But deep down, I knew my brother. When Mark felt small, he didn't shrink. He struck. By afternoon, I found out how. The first call came from the bank. Mr. Reed, we received a report of fraudulent activity on your account. We've frozen your business balance until further review. I gripped the phone tighter. What kind of report? A family member claimed unauthorized transactions and ownership issues, the woman said. It'll take a few days to resolve. Family member. That told me everything. I thanked her, hung up, and leaned on the counter. The kitchen clock ticked like it was mocking me. I knew Mark would do anything to prove he still had control, but I hadn't expected him to stoop this low, jeopardizing my livelihood. By evening, the whispers started. Aunt Carol called first. Tom, honey, someone's been talking. Talking about what? That you forged Mom's will. Said you used her old recording to trick people. Said she hesitated, profiting off her memory. My chest went cold. Who told you that? Mark, she admitted softly. He sent everyone an email this morning. He even attached screenshots of some transactions he claims prove it. I closed my eyes and exhaled. Of course he did. Lauren texted an hour later. Tom, I'm sorry about what Mark's doing. He's furious. He's saying Mom left you something big and that you're hiding it. I don't know what to believe. Please just tell me the truth. I didn't reply. Not yet. I sat down at my small dining table, the one Mom gave me when I bought my first house. My coffee from the morning sat there, still half full, now cold. The world outside looked normal, but inside my chest, a storm was building. I remembered Mom's last weeks. How she'd whispered things I never repeated to anyone. How she told me she wanted to make things right before she left. How she had looked me in the eye and said, one day, when the truth comes out, they'll hate you before they thank you. Maybe that day had come. The next morning, I drove to the law office that handled Mom's estate. A quiet place on Maple Avenue, run by an old friend named Mr. Coleman. He looked up when I entered. Tom, he said, I was just about to call you. Let me guess, I said. My brother's been here. He sighed. Twice. What did he say? That you manipulated your mother into changing her will in your favor. He rubbed his forehead. He's trying to contest it. Can he? Not without evidence, Coleman said. And you're in the clear there. But Tom, you might want to see this. He slid a manila folder across the desk. Inside were printed screenshots of an email thread. My name. My business. Transactions I'd never made. And forged messages. Messages that made it look like I'd asked Mom's lawyer to adjust certain details. My breath caught. He faked this. Yes, Coleman said grimly. And he's spreading it. He's trying to destroy your credibility before the court even sees the real documents. I clenched my fists. Why? Coleman looked me in the eye. Because if he can't have the family's respect, he'll settle for ruining the one person who does. I left his office and sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. I could almost hear Mom's voice again. Patience, Thomas. Let time speak for you. But patience felt like weakness now. By the next day, the storm hit full force. Neighbors started looking at me differently. People at the hardware store stopped talking when I walked in. Even church members gave polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Mark had done it. He'd turned the story. In their eyes, I wasn't the quiet son anymore. I was the liar. The fraud. I sat alone that night in my living room. Lights off. Only the hum of the refrigerator in the background. I stared at the family photo on the wall. Mom, Dad, Mark, Lauren, and me. Mark stood in the middle, hands on everyone's shoulders like he owned the whole picture. I thought of tearing it down. But instead, I whispered, not yet. Because I had something he didn't. Truth and patience. But even patience runs out. 2 days later, I got another message. No name, no number. Just words that made my blood run cold. If you don't back off, we'll show them what you did in 2009. I frowned. 2009, what could that mean? Then I remembered. 2009 was the year Mom had her first stroke. The year I'd signed medical papers for her surgery when she couldn't speak. The year Mark refused to help because the insurance policy wasn't clear. They were threatening to twist that into something ugly. That was the moment something inside me hardened. I wasn't the steady son anymore. Not the quiet one. Not the doormat. If Mark wanted war, he'd just started one. And this time, I wasn't walking away. I picked up my phone, called Mr. Coleman, and said quietly, "It's time to open the other envelope." He hesitated. "Are you sure, Tom? Once this starts, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said. Mom wanted the truth out when the family stopped acting like one. "Well, that time is now." Coleman sighed. "All right, I'll prepare everything. You'll need to be at the courthouse tomorrow morning." "Good," I said. "And make sure Mark gets his invitation." That night, as rain began to fall outside my window, I wrote a short letter and slipped it into an envelope. It read, "Dear Mark, I never wanted to embarrass you. I just wanted to remind you that Mom's legacy wasn't money. It was decency. You forgot that. Tomorrow, you'll remember. Tom." I placed it on my counter beside my keys. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Tomorrow would change everything. But I didn't yet know. Mark wasn't planning to show up empty-handed. He had something hidden too. Something that could destroy everything Mom built. The courthouse smelled like dust and paper, the kind of smell that sticks to your clothes and follows you home. I arrived early, wearing my old gray suit, the one I'd worn at Mom's funeral. The fabric had faded, but it still felt like armor. Mr. Coleman met me in the hallway. He was holding a thick envelope, sealed with red tape. "This," he said quietly, "is what your mother left with me. Her real final letter. It's time." I nodded. My palms were damp. At exactly 9:30, Mark arrived. He was wearing a navy blue suit, shiny shoes, and a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Lauren trailed behind him, her face pale. She avoided looking at me. "Morning, brother," Mark said as if nothing had happened. "Hope you slept well." "I sure did." I said nothing. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You can't win this, Tom. I know what's in your record. 2009, remember?" I looked at him, calm and steady. "You should have read everything before threatening me with it." He blinked, confused. But before he could speak, the bailiff called our names, and we walked into the small courtroom. It wasn't a trial, just a hearing about Mom's estate. But for Mark, it was his stage. He went first. He stood before the judge, playing his part like he'd rehearsed it all night. "Your Honor," he said, pretending to sound wounded, "I love my brother. I really do. But after our mother passed, certain documents changed, suspiciously. My brother suddenly had access to funds she never discussed with us. There's also evidence he forged communication with her lawyer." He glanced back at me with a grin. "And we have proof he used family money to fund personal ventures under the name Reed Restoration, LLC. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, nodded. "And your proof?" Mark handed over a printed folder. Coleman and I had already seen it. The same forgeries, the same lies. When it was my turn, I walked to the stand. My voice felt like gravel. "Your Honor," I said, "that company name he mentioned, it's my business. I've run it legally for 20 years. The money in question was his, but it was given to me last summer as a gift. He called it a bonus." Mark laughed, shaking his head. "A bonus? He's lying. I never." "Quiet," the judge said firmly. I reached into my folder and pulled out printed text messages. "These are from the day he sent the payment. You'll see the phrase, 'Keep it. You earned it.'" The judge examined the papers, then looked at Mark. "These messages came from your number, Mr. Reed." Mark opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again. That could have been spoofed. Coleman stood. "Your Honor, may I?" He handed the judge the red-sealed envelope. "This," he said, "is Mrs. Reed's notarized final statement, written before her passing and witnessed by 2 staff members at St. Mary's Hospice." The judge broke the seal carefully. The courtroom went still. Mom's handwriting appeared, familiar, looping, gentle. Coleman read aloud. "To my children, if you are reading this, I am gone. I know my passing will stir more than grief. I want my family to know that my estate belongs to no one person. It belongs to kindness. I have arranged for 80% of my remaining assets to fund the Reed Community Foundation, run by Thomas Reed, for single parents, veterans, and workers in need of repairs or shelter. The rest is to be divided equally among my children, provided they uphold honesty and unity." A low gasp swept through the room. Mark's face twisted. She didn't mean that," he stammered. "He must have convinced her. He always." Coleman interrupted. "Your Honor, Mrs. Reed also recorded her statement." He pressed play on a small recorder. Mom's voice filled the room again. "If Mark is angry, remind him that love doesn't count profits. Remind him that when I was sick, Thomas stayed. Not because of money, but because he loved me when no one else had time. That is who I trust. Mark's hands balled into fists. You manipulated her, he shouted, pointing at me. You poisoned her against me. The judge slammed her gavel. Enough, Mr. Reed. The echo of that gavel was the sound of something breaking, the last piece of his pride, maybe. After the session, the judge dismissed us until final processing. Lauren approached me slowly in the hallway. Her eyes were wet. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, I didn't know he'd go this far. I nodded. You don't have to explain. But Tom, she hesitated. You should know he's not done. I frowned. What do you mean? He told me something last night, she said in a shaky voice. He said if he can't win legally, he'll make it personal. Before I could ask what that meant, Coleman stepped out of the courtroom and called my name. I excused myself and followed him. He handed me a folder. We won't need to go through a long trial, but you'll want to be careful. If Mark's desperate, he might target you outside the law. I thanked him, shook his hand, and walked out to the parking lot. The sky was gray, thick with clouds that hadn't decided whether to rain or not. I sat in my truck, watching the courthouse doors. Mark came out a few minutes later. He didn't look at me. He just walked straight to his car, slammed the door, and peeled out of the lot. I thought that was the end of it. But I was wrong. That night, someone broke into my workshop. I arrived the next morning to find the back door kicked open, the cash drawer empty, and the walls spray-painted with words that made my stomach turn. Thief. Liar. Fake son. The police came, took pictures, asked questions. I told them I had no enemies. But when one officer asked, anyone who might want to make this personal? I hesitated. Mark's face flashed in my mind. But I didn't say his name. Not yet. Instead, I cleaned the mess myself, wiping the paint, fixing the lock, sweeping the shards of glass into a bucket. My hands shook, but not from fear. From something else. Anger. For 58 years, I had been steady, quiet, patient. But that morning, as sunlight caught the broken glass, I made a promise to myself. This time, I wouldn't wait for karma. This time, I'd teach Mark what embarrassment really felt like. He took everything from me, my peace, my name, my trust. But what he didn't know was that Mom had left me one more thing. Something even he couldn't fake. A key. A small brass key wrapped in paper, with 3 words written in her handwriting. When truth is buried. I had never known what it opened. Until that day. And when I found out, it would change everything. Not just for Mark, but for the entire Reed family. Chapter 5. The brass key sat in my palm, catching the sunlight like a secret waiting to speak. I'd kept it in a small tin box for 3 years, tucked away with Mom's old prayer card and a few faded photos. I'd almost forgotten it existed, until now. The note wrapped around it was still there, yellowed from time. When truth is buried. That phrase echoed in my head all morning as I stood in my workshop, sweeping up the last of the glass shards. The place smelled like paint thinner and dust. My hands were cut in small places, but I barely noticed. My mind was somewhere else, turning that phrase over and over. Mom wasn't poetic. She was practical. Every word she ever said had purpose. So if she'd written that, it meant she wanted me to find something. Something hidden. I drove to her old house. The one we grew up in. The one that still stood on Maplewood Lane with the same white porch and the same old mailbox leaning slightly to the left. I hadn't been there in months. The new owners, a quiet retired couple, greeted me kindly when I explained who I was. They let me look around. We still find little notes of hers in the drawers, the woman said with a smile. Your mother must have been sentimental. She was. But she was also smart. I went straight to her old bedroom, the one with the wooden floor that creaked twice near the window. I walked across it, listening for that familiar sound. 1 creak. 2. There. I knelt down. The floorboard looked ordinary, but when I pressed the edge, it lifted slightly. I wedged my fingers underneath and pulled. Beneath it was a small, rusted metal box. The key fit perfectly. When I turned it, I half expected the lock to crumble from age. But it clicked, clean and smooth, like it had been waiting for this moment. Inside the box were 2 things, an old brown notebook and a sealed envelope with my name on it. I opened the notebook first. It wasn't just any notebook. It was Mom's journal, the one she always carried in her purse, but never let anyone read. The first few pages were simple, grocery lists, doctor notes, reminders to call people. But halfway through, the writing changed. The lines grew tighter, more deliberate. The dates were from 2009, the year she'd had her first stroke. March 4th, 2009. I told Mark about the insurance. He said it's not enough and that we should delay the surgery until we find better coverage. I told him I don't have time. He left angry. Thomas signed the consent form instead. He didn't hesitate. He just said, "We'll find a way." I know that cost him his job. April 2nd, 2009. Mark came back with a man named Harris. He said he could invest in the house and help me recover the money later. But it didn't feel right. I told him no. He left again. I think he's hiding something. June 15th, 2009. Found letters in the mail addressed to Reed Investments. Not Thomas's handwriting. Mark's. He's using my name on something I didn't sign. I told Thomas. He said he'll handle it quietly. July 1st, 2009. Thomas took papers to a lawyer today. He said it's to protect me. I didn't want to believe Mark could do something that cruel, but I think he already did. My hands started shaking. She'd known. She'd known all along. I turned the last few pages. October 22nd, 2009. I made sure my assets go through Thomas when I'm gone. He won't brag. He won't boast. He'll do what's right. I'm sorry, Mark. I tried to trust you. But truth always finds its way home, even if it's buried. My chest felt tight. That phrase again. When truth is buried. Then I remembered the second thing in the box, the envelope with my name. I tore it open carefully. Inside was a single folded paper and another key. This one was silver. The note attached read, "For the safety deposit box. When you're ready to forgive." I drove straight to the local bank. The clerk recognized my mother's name right away. "Yes, Mr. Reed," she said. "There's been a box in her name, with instructions that it could only be opened by you after her death, and upon presentation of this exact key." She led me to a small back room. My hands trembled as I turned the key in the lock. Inside, there was a thin stack of papers, legal papers, and on top, a flash drive. The folder was labeled Reed Investments, 2009 to 2012. I opened the flash drive on the clerk's computer. The files inside were contracts, bank statements, and scanned letters, all signed by Mark, all tied to accounts that used Mom's name as collateral. He had forged her signature and used her home equity for his failed real estate ventures. The company had collapsed years ago, leaving unpaid loans in her name, loans I had unknowingly paid off. There was even a letter to a bank manager, written in Mark's handwriting, begging for an extension on Mrs. Reed's account. My pulse pounded in my ears. He'd stolen from her while she was alive, and he'd tried to bury it under my name after she was gone. The truth wasn't just buried. It was rotting. But now I had the shovel. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the documents spread out in front of me. Every piece of paper was a nail in his coffin, not a physical one, but the one pride builds for itself. I didn't call the police right away. I didn't even tell Coleman. I wanted to do this right. Slowly, quietly. So I started with the same thing Mark had used to destroy me, reputation. I scanned the documents, uploaded them to a private link. And the next morning, I sent one single email to every family member, every mutual friend, every person who'd received Mark's lies. The subject line read, "Before you judge a man, read what he protected." Inside was the link. I didn't add a single word more. By noon, my phone exploded with messages. "Lauren, oh my God, Tom. I had no idea. Aunt Carol. I always knew something smelled off about that boy." Even distant cousins wrote. He used her name for loans? But I didn't answer any of them. Because at 4 p.m., my phone rang, and it was Mark. His voice was shaking. "You think you've won? You think embarrassing me fixes anything?" I said quietly. "You called me an embarrassment first. I just returned the favor." He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, low and trembling, "You ruined me." "No," I said. "You did that yourself." And then I hung up. Later that night, Lauren came by. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Mom once braided her hair and laughed about small things. "She would have been proud of you," Lauren said softly. I smiled faintly. "I don't think she wanted revenge." "No," she said, "but she wanted peace. And you gave it to her." Outside, the crickets sang. The air felt lighter. For the first time in years, I felt like the house could breathe again. Before Lauren left, she turned back and said, "He's moving away, you know. Somewhere up north. Said he can't show his face here anymore." I nodded. "Good." She smiled sadly. "Tom, you really were the steady one." When she drove off, I sat alone again. The envelope, the key, the notebook, all of it lay in front of me like chapters of a story finally closed. I thought of the reunion, the laughter, the stares, the humiliation that turned into applause. And I realized, maybe Mom knew this day would come all along. She knew her quiet son would have to stand up someday. Not with anger, not with pride, but with proof. I closed the box, locked it, and whispered to the empty room. Rest now, Mom. The truth isn't buried anymore. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the Reed family name finally meant something again.